Hey up everyone, welcome to this video. I'm Benocht na Fela Podegard because it's St. Patrick's Day and I'm in quarantine still. If you didn't watch the end of the last video about Mosley and friends, I actually did a hobby update rather than a reading thing or anything else, a little channel live thing. I'm obviously coronavirus is hit. We're all sick of talking about it, we're all sick of hearing about it, so I'll be quick. I'm basically in quarantine for this week up until Saturday, where I get to go home and chill the fuck out and try and get away from it all a little bit, hopefully. Uni's closed, so I'm just more or less, reading, doing hobby, and doing work at home. So I'm getting through a load of books, while I'm doing a load of models, and hopefully when I'm back at home we can get some battle reports done and stuff. But right now I'm just riding out the wave, and my usual pub visit on St. Patrick's Day has very much been binned. So I've got the cans of Guinness, we've got the glasses in, which have definitely been legally bought. There's 2 there, there's another 6 there because I love my Guinness, mate. Definitely legally bought, not nicked from a pub, I can promise you that now, swear down. And I've also got the James Connolly t-shirt on, because you've got to represent Connolly, haven't you? So yeah, that's basically what's going on with me. Quarantine, St. Patrick's Day, going on the piss. Let's talk about some books, because that's what I know you're all here for on this channel. First of all, obviously I'm going to do my reading challenge. I want to get to 25 books by the end of the year. I'm currently on 12 and a half, but I'm just going to cover book number 6 and number 10. I'm going to do it in installments of like 5 to keep on top of it. But first of all, we have this book here, James Larkin by Emmett Larkin, who is no relation to Jim Larkin himself. This is a book from 1964, I think. I could be wrong about that. It's one of the original biographies of Jim Larkin, and it's probably one of the best ones as well. It's where a lot of the more recent accounts of his life get a lot of the information from. So it's really good, really interesting. It covers his life from working on the Liverpool docks up to the Dublin lockout, building the Irish Transport and General Workers Union, and then something as well I haven't read before is how it actually covers after the lockout as well. So he actually fled to America, spent the war over there, worked for the Germans actually as well, and became a bit of a saboteur, and then he sacked that off as he realised it was a bit immoral and the Germans were actually kind of shitty. So really interesting, covers that, how he got involved with Lenin and the Russian Revolution, his visits to Moscow, and then finally how his political career kind of fell apart. So it's a really interesting working class history of Ireland, and he's definitely one of the key figures in Irish history. And it's well worth a read. I got it for about £3, which you can tell it's a bit tatty, a bit old, and the cover looks awful. It's one of those kind of 60s designs, so it's not quite as sleek as a modern book could be. But yeah, really interesting book to get through. It's weighty at times, obviously because the language is about 60 years old now, isn't it? It's the 60s, if my maths is good. It's still brilliant to get through. Well worth reading if you can pick it up. If you've got any kind of interest in Irish history, that's the one. So that's the first book out of the way. Next, leading on from the union theme, is Why You Should Be a Trade Unionist by Len McCluskey, obviously the General Secretary of the Unite Trade Union, which is my union actually. This is brilliant. Honestly, if there's one book, again, I'm going to do one suggestion out of every 5 I do. This is the one I recommend. You can get it from most bookshops, so you're not going to any kind of dodgy lefty sites or anything. Talks about obviously how the economy's changed and stuff, 0 hours contracts, and the need for a union now, and to rebuild communities and stuff after obviously what happened with Thatcher and that. I mean, don't want to get too much into recent politics, I guess, but yeah, that's great for going over that. And I think everyone should be in a trade union, whether you're left or right or whatever. It's just kind of the basic part of having being part of the workforce in it, and to protect your rights at work. So really approachable, goes over it all, and Len McCluskey's a good writer and a decent lad. So that's well worth a read. I think there was obviously there's power in a union, so well worth going over that as well. Next, very controversial. This book is One Man's Terrorist, A Political History of the IRA. Very, very controversial, obviously. But it's very highly critical of them. Obviously, it kind of goes over, because during the Troubles there were 3 separate IRAs. There was the Provos, the officials, and the Irish National Liberation Army, and it goes over each of their individual politics, why they actually split, what are the divisions, what are their tactics, and definitely, and also the Irish nationalist movement outside of the IRA as well. It wasn't just the bombs and the Armalites and stuff. There was mass marches like the Civil Rights March in Derry in 1969, and the Battle of the Bogside. These are all separate from the IRA and very critical of them as well. So it's not, licking them out and saying go join the RA and shit. It's just a really interesting history, and obviously the Troubles, very traumatic, very controversial, but really interesting to read about. And it covers, I don't think I've actually read anything that's so informative about the Troubles, but also so approachable as well. It's quite easy to get your teeth into. You might have to look up a few names here and there. It goes over the role of Gerry Adams and Sinn Féin as well, what was their relationship to the IRA, and how the movement's going on today as well, obviously, with the Good Friday Agreement and the rise of dissident Republicans who are trying to bring back the RA and doing awful things in the north of Ireland. And that's, disgusting. But really interesting book. A kind of left-wing perspective on the RA, obviously highly critical of it, but also analysing where the tactics for these people came from, what was the basis for their ideology, and why they did what they did, and ultimately the way they got peace was not by the actions that by the action of the IRA. It was by negotiation with the British government and also compromise and talks, which is the way forward at the end of the day. Compromise, talk to each other, and you can work out your differences, and that's the key message of this book. It's that peace and compromise is definitely the way forward in these kind of situations. So that's a very interesting book to read. I understand why people won't want to read it, but if you're looking for a kind of a nationalist lefty perspective of the Troubles, but still nuanced, this is a great book to go for. And I think you can get like 70% off or something on it on the Verso website, so well worth checking out. Next book, an ancient book actually, fits into that, which obviously I know a lot of people don't like, and a lot of people unsubscribe from me whenever I post that up, but you know what? Looks sick, doesn't it? So there we go. 10 Days That Shook the World by John Reed, who was an American in the 1920s, who was a journalist and went over to the Russian Revolution in 1917 and did a report on it. This is a highly readable book. It's so easy to get through. Even though it's like nearly 100 years old, it still reads like it's almost modern. And Lenin actually introduced it by saying, with the greatest interest and with never slackening attention, I read John Reed's book, 10 Days That Shook the World. I unreservedly do I recommend it to the workers of the world. Here is a book that I should like to see published in millions of copies and translated into all languages. So, endorsed by Lenin himself, that could be a massive negative against it, or it could be a massive positive. But he kind of takes the objective look at it as well. He's obviously quite pro-communist, but he also goes over the internal struggles, the lack of democracy at the start of the movement, how it started off in like a small committee and then it spread much larger and it gained popularity from there. Really interesting book. I think it's only about 200 and something pages as well, so it's quite easy to get through. It's dense at times with the amount of committees that are going on, but you soon get your head around it. And the best part of this book is the conversations that you have with the ordinary Russian people. So it's like the soldiers, the peasants and the workers, their experiences of the revolution, what they thought about it, and the kind of mass outrage they had against not only the Tsar at first, but then the provisional government led under Kerensky, and what led them to join Lenin and the Bolsheviks, and the hopes they had for society, which were then obviously dashed later on by the horrors of Stalinism and the purges and stuff. But the amount of hope that was in this book, in the aspirations of the Russian working class and what they wanted society to be like, based on democracy and egalitarianism, is inspiring, and it's brilliant to read. And again, this is another one I recommend to nearly every single person should read this book, just to see what it was like in Russia on the ground, because there's a lot of shit that's written about the Russian Revolution, obviously, with the Cold War tensions and stuff. A lot of it's either very pro-Stalin or obviously very pro, the West and stuff. This kind of cuts through that and gets straight to what's happening on the ground. There's not much conversation with Trotsky or Lenin or Stalin or anything. It's all conversation with ordinary Russian people, and that's what makes it such a good read, I think. And I would definitely recommend that to the masses as Lenin did. The final one, another Irish book. It's Never Give Up by Gerry Adams. It's got his lovely face on the front there. This is like just a bunch of random little like collective writings, stuff from his eulogy at Martin McGuinness's funeral to the Irish peace process, up to funny things he sees on the way to the Irish Doll, his experience with sports and hurling. Like, this has something for everyone in there. Like, there's so much stuff in this book, and it's only about 2 or 3 pages per like chapter or something. So it's quite light reading to get through. He writes in a really approachable kind of way, and he covers, you know, the hard-hitting topics like slavery in modern Ireland, modern Irish slavery, and also the funny stuff as well. You know, the more light-hearted things like his dogs and playing hurley with his friends and stuff, and going to the pub and that. So it's a really interesting book to go through. Obviously, it doesn't talk about the 1980s so much. It's all writings that are done after 2009, so it's got modern Sinn Féin, modern, more modern Irish politics. Although obviously there's always the undercurrent there of what happened, because obviously that's where, you know, he gained his fame, and where he was quite influential again in that peace process. So it was a really interesting book. I probably would read more by Gerry Adams, like his book about his tweets that he does. Like, to think that at one point his voice was literally banned by the British government, and now on Twitter he's just like this old man who's like posting pictures of his flowers and his walks and that, like the least like confrontational person. It's quite cute and really funny, weirdly. But yeah, interesting book. Recommend that as well. And I don't think I've actually read a bad book so far. I've actually had quite good taste, I like to think anyway, in terms of what I've read. But yeah. That's the book. That's the next 5 books that I've got through this. I think it's been a month or something since I last posted one. I've got, like I say, I'm on to 12 and a half now. I'm currently reading Look Who's Back, a fiction book. Like, wow, who would have thunk that? Brilliant, love that. So yeah, only 2.5 more after I've finished that one, and then there'll be another update. But it won't be with that in the background. It won't be with that or Marks or anything else. It will be back at my family home in a bit more of a squash space, and hopefully we'll all still be well. So obviously I wish you and yours the best during these hard times, obviously with the virus going about. Get a lot of hobby done, get the reading doing, keep active. I've just been pacing my room like a madman and doing like little workouts and things, so you got to try and got to keep your mind on the ball, otherwise you will probably go mad. So yeah, I wish everyone the best in these times. Stay inside for now, stay calm, follow the advice, and then we can have a massive sesh in summer when the pubs open again. We can have a lovely, brilliant time. But until then, have a brilliant St. Patrick's Day. Hope you all get the cans in and have a lovely time with your mates and your family. Maybe keep the kids away. Alcohol is not good for them. But brilliant. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye, guys.